Chapter 480. However, halfway through the meal, everyone heard a tiger's roar. Because it came too suddenly, everyone was startled at first. Then, someone shouted, "Tiger," and the scene immediately became restless. Tigers were no joke. Even if they hadn't seen one before, they definitely knew how ferocious tigers were. As the saying goes, one's face would turn pale at the mention of a tiger. Fear was unforgettable. Moreover, listening to the roar, it seemed to be very close. Who wouldn't panic? Moreover, it was said that there was a rare beast garden in this manor. There were countless rare and exotic beasts in it. Perhaps this tiger was one of them. The more they thought about it, the more panicked they became. They also felt that the tiger's roar was getting closer and closer. Li Hongyuan put down his chopsticks. Eunuch Mu immediately handed him a wet towel. He took it and then slowly wiped his mouth. Then, he changed to another towel to wipe his hands. He looked unmoved as if he didn't hear anything. After wiping his hands, he threw the towel back. Seeing him like this, the other masters at the same table also restrained themselves and didn't move. It was too embarrassing to show fear. Imperial bodyguard Qian rushed over. Obviously, he came because of the tiger. "What's the matter?" Li Hongyuan asked faintly. "Master, 2 tigers in the rare beast garden ran out. The guards there couldn't stop them and ran to the horse farm. The tigers hurt a few people. Now, they are trying to drive the tigers back. If they don't listen, just kill them. Why waste so much effort?" It was obviously a very ferocious thing, but in his mouth, it was so understated. It was like pinching an ant to death. "Yes." After Imperial bodyguard Qian left, Li Hongyuan poured another cup of wine. "It's just a small matter. I just don't know who did it. It's so clumsy. Could it be that someone thinks that killing a few people can affect this prince?" Ha! When the few people present heard this, they did not respond. However, they all had different thoughts. How should they put it? They were not only worried that if they responded, the fire would burn them. When facing Li Hongyuan, apart from the 5th prince, there was probably no one who did not think of the problem of killing him. Especially in the current situation, it could be said that he was blocking the path of too many people. Now that such a thing had happened, they were all suspicious of each other. Who was the culprit? Although Li Hongyuan would not be able to completely suppress the death of a few people, if the people who died were more important, then even His Majesty would have to deal with it. After all, there was no difference between nobility and lowliness. How could the final result be the same when a few commoners died and a few high-ranking officials and nobles died? For the former, it was not impossible for Lu Qingdi to suppress it. However, for the latter, the difficulty was too great. Therefore, if the appearance of the tiger at the horse farm was not an accident but man-made, then it was obvious that they did not feel that this plan was clumsy. Or, even if it did not succeed, as long as the tail was cleaned up, it did not matter. If the first time did not succeed, then the second time, if the second time did not succeed, then the third time. If the precious beast's garden did not succeed, then the horse farm did. If the horse farm did not succeed, then the manor did. There was a saying that went, "There are thieves for 1,000 days, there are no thieves for 1,000 days." Jin Qinhuang only had that little amount of manpower. If he could really make it watertight, then there would be a problem. As long as it was not like an iron bucket, then there would be a flaw. In the beginning, there was no need to think about his name. It could be done in a roundabout way. As long as His Majesty's favor towards him was weakened, it would be even better if His Majesty disliked him. After that, it would be much easier. Therefore, they did not think that under this kind of condition, some people had strangely reached an agreement in their hearts. With regards to their thoughts, Li Hongyuan did not know. However, even if he knew, he would not care. His current attitude was that he would not take the initiative to expose anything. However, if some people were to sense it, then he would not care at all. Moreover, this time's horse race was such a big spectacle. It was to give some people a chance. If nothing really happened, then it would be disappointing. It was just that his own wife was kind-hearted and would not involve innocent people. After all, the open and covert struggles between these people could easily take someone's life. Therefore, the horse farm and the people who came and went were strictly guarded. There must not be any slip-ups. If there was a problem with the horse and it went crazy in the competition, the probability of someone losing their life was too high. Li Hongyuan felt that it was a pity that he was not able to make use of this point. It was just that this idea of using the precious beast's garden, Li Hongyuan's eyes darkened and he finished the wine in his hand in one gulp. Compared to Li Hongyuan's calmness, Jingwan was not so calm. It was not because she was afraid, but because the tiger had hurt someone. One must know that the animals in the precious beast's garden were all wild. Their bestial nature and wildness, their lethality was absolutely terrifying. In the absence of anesthetics, the tiger had hurt someone and could not be brought back. Li Hongyuan gave the order to kill, and Jingwan could only remain silent. However, the matter did not end there. Just as Jingwan was quietly waiting for the result, a servant hurried over. Even if the order to kill was given, someone still died. Moreover, this person was not a servant, but a son of an aristocratic family. Jingwan almost cursed. If this matter was not caused by someone, she would write the name backwards. https:///11/11807/119749959. Chapter 481. Jingwan almost swore. If this matter wasn't man-made, she would write her name backwards. She didn't mind if someone tampered with it, but she wasn't prepared for someone to die. Jingwan stood up. I have something to do, excuse me for a moment. Her expression was particularly cold, even a bit sharp, as she walked away. Outsiders had never seen Jingwan like this before. No matter what the rumors about Jin Qin Wang Fei were, most of the people that outsiders came into contact with were absolutely gentle and good-tempered. Some people even felt that she didn't seem like someone from the imperial family and damaged the dignity of the imperial family. Looking at her now, they were completely wrong. Thinking about it, no matter how she used to be, after marrying into the imperial family, she was at least 30% worse. Compared to Jingwan, even if he knew that someone had died, Li Hongyuan didn't have the intention to get up and deal with it. He only said to hand it over to Wang Fei. Moreover, on their side, it wasn't the people below who whispered to Li Hongyuan, but directly said it out loud. Once Li Hongyuan's words came out, the people around them started to speculate, thinking that Li Hongyuan wanted to use his Wang Fei as a scapegoat. Obviously, this matter would be brought to Lu Qingdi, and according to Lu Qingdi's preference for Jin Qin Wang, it was believed that he would be very happy to have someone take the blame for his son, even if that person was his daughter-in-law. The people who were secretly delighted just a moment ago couldn't help but secretly scold Li Hongyuan for being shameless. But they never thought that if they encountered a similar matter, they would definitely push their own daughter-in-law out. The main culprit and the accomplice were two different things. Moreover, the matter of not teaching strictly couldn't even be counted as an accomplice. After all, that was a daughter-in-law, not a child. Her moral upbringing was more on the head of the in-law's family than the husband's family. However, Li Hongyuan's gaze swept over the body of the guard who reported to him. Someone died in the master's territory and he directly shouted it out. Should he say that this kind of person was honest and straightforward? Or was it something else? One must know that even if the master didn't care, the final decision should be made by the master. Sigh, even if he wasn't a demon, such a person should be properly trained. If he was, then all the more, he should be trained to the point of death. Training to the point of death would count. When Jingwan arrived at the scene, the tiger had already become a corpse. The ground was dripping with blood, and the smell of blood was very strong. In addition, there was a mat under which, most likely, the aristocratic family's son. The smell of blood made Jingwan feel a little nauseous. She covered her mouth and nose with a handkerchief. Tell me the details. Your Highness, the situation is like this. The situation was originally under control, and the irrelevant people were stopped outside. We were working together to kill the tiger. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly rushed in. The tiger was already furious, and when this person rushed in, the tiger directly opened its mouth. We didn't even have time to react before we were buried in the tiger's mouth. Now he understood that he was just throwing his life away. Jingwan curled her lips coldly. She didn't hesitate to use her own life to plot against her husband. Of course, she wouldn't have the slightest bit of mercy. Which family is he from? Your Highness, he is the only son of Secretary Bai. Jingwan was slightly startled and frowned. Things were really a little troublesome. Although the Bai family was not a top noble family, the most promising branch of it was Luqingdi's family. The former Empress Dowager Bai was a smart person. At the very beginning, she didn't let her niece be her son's princess. Later, after Luqingdi ascended the throne, she didn't let any white girl enter the palace. She even suppressed her family. She didn't let her family stand out, and she never interfered in the political affairs. When Luqingdi ascended the throne, he couldn't do without the Empress Dowager and Lady Bai. Empress Dowager Bai's behavior naturally won the favor of Luqingdi. Before Empress Dowager Bai died, the relationship between mother and son had been very good. When Empress Dowager Bai died, Luqingdi was so sad that he didn't go to court for a month. When Empress Dowager Bai died, she didn't have any other request. She just hoped that Luqingdi could take care of her family. She didn't want them to be rich or noble. As long as they didn't violate the law, he would protect them from being bullied. How could Luqingdi not agree to such a low request? Therefore, although the Bai family was not prominent and was very low-key, many people didn't even know about it. In the entire capital, the Bai family was definitely in the top 3 families that couldn't be provoked. If the one who died was an ordinary member of the Bai family, it would be fine. The problem was that the Bai family didn't have many children. Empress Dowager Bai only had one brother and one younger brother, no sisters. The younger brother was only a few years older than Luqingdi. He didn't have much ability but basically didn't cause any trouble. Now, he was still alive, and his children and grandchildren were not bad. The problem was that Luqingdi's first uncle only had one son, the current Secretary Bai. Luqingdi's first uncle was also a cabinet minister. After Empress Dowager Bai's death, he resolutely resigned on the grounds that he was not feeling well. However, bravely retreating was one thing. Another thing was to make way for his son. The current Secretary Bai also had some difficulties in having children. In fact, in order to continue the bloodline, he had many wives and concubines. However, he had more than a dozen daughters. It wasn't easy for him to have a son. It was conceivable that such a single son was valued. https://11/11807/119756662 Chapter 482. Now, this soul seedling was gone. Bai Shi's status was special, and similarly, she did not participate in the struggle for the throne. Bai Shu was a wily old fox. As long as he made his presence known at the right time, the position of one of the 4 elders would inevitably have a seat for him. He could be considered as having a son at an old age. Although he still had a few years old daughter at home, he was still busy making babies, hoping to give birth to a son. His son was not yet 20 years old, so he did not need to be like his father, retiring early. He only needed to steadily and surely pave his son's path. When the day came when he could no longer move, it would be almost there. As a result, Bai Shu's married daughters were more than 10, but not a single one was directly related to the princes. However, if one were to carefully line them up and calculate, they would find that except for Jin Wang, they were basically related to everyone. Under such circumstances, if this precious piece of meat died, it was equivalent to all their efforts being in vain, all their plans coming to naught. Even the best person would go crazy. Therefore, the Bai family did not care how the person died. They only knew that after the person died, they would do everything to get justice. Not counting Bai Shu, Luqingdi's cousin, Luqingdi's eldest uncle was still alive. Although he was old, he basically did not move at home. His only grandson was gone. It was estimated that even if he had to crawl, he would crawl into the palace to cry to Luqingdi. What would Luqingdi do? Take it lightly. It would only be a thunderous rage. Jingwan also thought that the person who schemed against them was really clumsy. Looking at it now, it was clearly very brilliant. No matter what the method was, as long as the person was killed and died in Jin Wang's manner, that was a good method. Not to mention that so many people saw Bai Gongzi pounce to court death. As long as there was no solid evidence to prove that someone was secretly plotting behind, the Bai family would bite Jin Wang to death. For example, if there was no horse racing, his grandson would not go to the manor. If Jin Wang's people did not guard well, his grandson would not have died. If Jin Wang did not raise a tiger, his grandson would not have died. In short, there were many reasons. Although Luqingdi would not go so far as to take his son's life, and Jin Wang appeared to be very idle on the surface, even if he was fined his salary and grounded, it would not be a big deal. It would certainly not satisfy the Bai family. What was most likely was that they would use all of their friendship with Luqingdi to strip Jin Wang of his title and demote him to a common person. For a commoner to become the emperor, unless Luqing Emperor's other sons were all dead, otherwise, it would be more legitimate than a baby prince. Although Jin Wang couldn't ascend the throne normally, but he couldn't kill all his brothers after usurping the throne, right? From Emperor Luqingdi's point of view, the sixth son could not inherit the throne anyway. Therefore, it did not matter whether the sixth son's status was higher or lower. With his protection, even if the sixth son was a commoner, he could continue to do whatever he wanted. As for what would happen after 100 years, he would leave an imperial edict early to restore the title of nobility to the son who inherited the throne. In this way, the other sons would not have to worry about passing the throne to the sixth son. This was simply killing two birds with one stone. And in Emperor Luqingdi's heart, it could be said that he would be complacent to solve the problem and protect his son well. Therefore, if there was no strong evidence to catch the real culprit, things would probably develop as planned. However, thinking about it, since they had laid out such a trap, naturally it would not be easy to get hold of the evidence. Jingwan rubbed her eyebrows. How should she break this trap? Have all the people at the scene been detained for interrogation? Wang Fei, rest assured. They have been guarded and carefully questioned. They will not let go of any clues. Imperial bodyguard Qian said. Speaking of which, they were also angry. Things were under control, but in the end, such a problem occurred. It was simply a disgrace to them. After all, the other party was just a pampered young master who did not have much strength. They were well trained. And the guards guarding the periphery were also rice buckets. They were concentrating on dealing with the tiger and did not notice. Could it be that the people outside also could not watch one person? So easily let people run in, or did they deliberately let them in? You've been working for His Highness for a long time. I believe in your ability to do things. Jingwan paused. If there is something suspicious and the other party is not willing to let go, directly ask Gongzhou to do it. Just don't kill anyone. Imperial bodyguard Qian looked at Jingwan with some surprise and quickly lowered his head. Looking at some dark things, the Wang Fei also knew. And according to her temperament, she was ruthless. It seemed that she was really angry. In addition, temporarily seal the manor. Without permission, no one is allowed to go out. Also, inform the Bai family. Yes. Go and ask the prince to come. If it did not involve the Bai family, naturally it would be done. It was fine even without someone. Yes. Jingwan's eyes fell on the mat. Wait, has Gongzhou seen the body? Replying to Wang Fei, he has not. There are too many people. Even if Master Bai's servants were interrogated, they were not willing to go too far away. They insisted that Master Bai's body was under their eyes. They were very emotional and made a lot of noise. If they touch Master Bai's body, I am afraid that the Bai family will not let it go. Jingwan's eyes swept the periphery and quickly found the target. Although she did not know what they were talking about, she could faintly hear crying. Because the tiger had hurt people before, Jingwan thought that the crying was related to those people. But thinking about it, it was impossible for the injured body to stay here. It must be sent to another place to heal. Thinking about it carefully, these servants of the Bai family were also very strange. They should know their master's position in the Bai family. If their master died, they would definitely not have a good ending. If they had better endurance, they would be trembling in fear and almost fainting. But now, they still had the mind to think about other things. They were crying and wailing to guard their master's body to prevent others from touching it. This was not normal. Let Gongzhou do it. Interrogate these people first. Since they've already been frightened, it's reasonable for them to be a little more miserable. Then, send someone trustworthy to watch over young Master Bai's body. Don't let anyone get close. Evacuate all unrelated people. Let Gongzhou take a look at the body as soon as possible. Before the Bai family arrives, we have to finish everything. Also, find 2 experienced coroners to do the autopsy in front of the Bai family. No one would rush into the mouth of a tiger for no reason. If he was not drugged, he must have been caught with something that could affect his mind. This Master Bai was the only son of the Bai family. He was the kind that was endlessly spoiled. However, among the rich playboys in the capital, he was the kind that kept a low profile and did not cause any trouble. Master Bai and his father were very smart. Although they spoiled him, they knew how to control it well. Therefore, Master Bai's reputation was really not well known. So, it was almost impossible for him to be caught with something that could be used against him. Even if there was, he would definitely tell his family. In order to protect this only son of the Bai family, the 2 elders of the Bai family would definitely try to cover up the matter. Therefore, the possibility of him being drugged was more than 90%. Yes. Jingwan glanced at him. You should have thought about it. I am overthinking. If I say so much, it will delay the time. Do it as soon as possible. Princess, you are very thoughtful. We are not as good as you. That's enough. Don't flatter me. I know how much weight I'm worth. Do it as soon as possible. Yes. It seemed that the flattery failed. Well, when it came to pleasing the princess, he was not as good as Mu Hen, the henchman who was used to flattering. Jingwan found a place to sit down. She did not want to disturb them. The maid served Jingwan a cup of tea. Jingwan occasionally took a sip. Most of the time, she held the teacup and pondered. It was not good to be too idle. This matter either did not come or was extremely tricky. When Li Hongyuan came over, he saw Jingwan quietly pondering. He waved to the maid who greeted him. When Jingwan looked up, his fingertips fell on her face. They looked at each other for a moment. Li Hongyuan said, "Don't worry. It's okay. I think you already know who died. I am worried that in the future." Li Hongyuan pressed his fingertips on Jingwan's lips. "Wan, why do you think that this matter will go according to someone's plan? Do you think you can find the real murderer?" The corners of Li Hongyuan's mouth curled up. "What's the point of investigating the real culprit? There's no need to investigate. Just put on a show. If we investigate too thoroughly, wouldn't we be exposing our strength to outsiders? Even if it's just a drop in the ocean, wouldn't it make people more afraid? Although a fly is nothing to be afraid of, it will be very annoying if there are too many of them. Instead of spending time dealing with those trivial matters, I'm naturally more willing to spend time with Wan." Jingwan slapped his hand away. "I'm serious. I'm not joking with Wan. When I first came here, I have already ordered that there is no need to use special means to interrogate. Just ask the normal questions. Gong Jiu doesn't need to look at the body. When the coroner and the Bai family arrive, they can directly conduct an autopsy. The coroner will say whatever the result is. Anyway, according to what you said, it is very difficult to find the real murderer. Some people can't be touched without evidence. It's just a suspicion. So, there is no need to waste time." Jingwan looked at him. Was he not joking? Are you going to take a step back in order to advance? Are you really going to be a commoner? A commoner? Wan is really thinking too much. If I become a commoner, won't Wan be wronged? My position will only be high, not low. I will not be low. Retreating in order to advance was something that could be done, but it was impossible to make him retreat so much. In this matter, there was no need for him to do so. So, Yuan already has a countermeasure. Can you tell me what you are going to do? Wouldn't it be more interesting to have a reversal at the end of the matter? The problem is, according to what you said, I already know the final outcome. So, I am not interested in the reversal process. If you put it that way, well, it's probably taking drastic measures. What about the specifics? These words were equivalent to not saying anything. Li Hongyuan laughed again. Wan is so smart. You can make a guess yourself. Jingwan's face was a little dark. Why was he still joking with her at this time? However, the so-called taking drastic measures probably meant that he had something on the Bai family. It was a very fatal kind. If he revealed it to Lu Qingdi, even if Empress Dowager Bai was his friend, Lu Qingdi would never help the Bai family. He would even kill the Bai family. Seeing Jingwan's anger, Li Hongyuan finally stopped teasing her. He sat next to her and whispered in her ear. Jingwan opened her eyes wide in surprise. The so-called taking drastic measures was completely different from what she thought. Are you sure this is true? You are not going to do this. Of course it's true. If it's false, maybe I will do the same. Jingwan looked at him with a strange expression. Prince knows a lot about the things in the capital. It was time to publish gossip magazines. There must be some special news. What can this prove? Li Hongyuan did not take it seriously. As a person of two lives, it was normal to know more than others. It shows that Yuan has trained well and his subordinates are all capable people. Otherwise, how can you be omniscient? Li Hongyuan cast a sidelong glance at her. Wan, are you trying to plead for them in a roundabout way? With this, Jingwan reacted. No matter what, today's matter, whether it was the guards of Jin Wangfu or the people who looked after the tigers in the precious beasts garden, other than participating, the rest could be regarded as dereliction of duty. They must be punished. It was just a matter of light or heavy. I only hope that after the matter is clear, Prince can be lenient with the irrelevant people. Didn't I let someone pass on a message to you before? This matter will be handed over to you. How to deal with it, you have the final say. If it involved the Bai family, how could she deal with it? Alright, she could deal with the people in the Wangfu. The real culprit could be casually investigated. But the people inside, who was the traitor, it must be clear. No matter what the reason was, they must be severely punished. Jingwan firmly believed that they would be able to find out the truth. What's next? What should we do? I have already let people temporarily seal the farmstead. Today, we invited people to race horses. What else can we do? Li Hongyuan said unconcernedly. Jingwan was helpless. The person who died is your cousin. Continuing the horse race, wasn't that poking at someone's lung? So what? Don't talk about the cousin who is 2 or 3 levels apart, even if it's a blood brother, Ben Wang will still do the same. It can't be helped if he is not pleasing to the eye. In any case, not many people find Ben Wang pleasing to the eye. Alright, as long as you are happy. Horse race, continue the horse race. In any case, there was already a plan to deal with this matter. In the end, a certain person would not have anything to do, so there was no need to worry. As for Bai Gongzi, who was most likely to die in vain, because he became the only son of Scholar Bai, his value was quite big and he became an unlucky person. Jingwan laughed at herself in her heart. At the foot of the Son of Heaven, there were open struggles and covert struggles for the throne. There were also the ups and downs in each of the noble families and courtyards. Who knew how many people died in vain? Jingwan sorted out her emotions, stood up, and gave 2 orders to the people around her. Soon, everyone in the farmstead got the news that the tiger came out and a life was lost. This matter was basically known to everyone. Originally, everyone was in a state of panic. They thought that Jin Qinwang and Jin Qinwang Fei would send the guests off. They didn't think that they would be so careless and actually want to continue the horse race. Perhaps it was not careless, but cold-blooded and did not take human life seriously. However, there were also some people who felt that Jin Qinwang was secretly detaining them in the farmstead. It was just that he was really afraid, or it was for some purpose. Some people made a ruckus and wanted to leave the farmstead and return to the capital. However, the person they wanted to arm wrestle with was the living king of hell. If it was another person, perhaps they could still win. But it was the living king of hell. If they didn't officially arm wrestle, they would have to admit defeat. Therefore, they made a ruckus and in the end, they would still be obedient. Li Hongming and the others had another thought. The current Scholar Bai was not only Fu Huang's cousin, but also had been Fu Huang's study companion. They had a close relationship and deep feelings. Above him, there was also a tactful uncle who helped him ascend the throne. There was also that biological mother who had already passed away. 3 layers of friendship superimposed on top of each other, how many people could compare? They believed that even Li Hongyuan would certainly understand the power of this. Thus, how could Li Hongyuan not be arrogant and impatient? Was he certain that Fu Huang would not do anything to him? Or was there something that they didn't know? Jin Qinwang wanted to continue the horse race, so everyone could only go to the arena. It was clearly the same, but the base price of the bet was even higher, so it should be more exciting. However, most people couldn't raise their spirits. Perhaps it was because of the fear of the beast. This tiger was dead, but who knew if other beasts would appear, or perhaps it was because they were thinking about the matter itself and didn't have the heart to think about anything else. It was just that these things had a smaller impact on the children, and their attention was also easier to divert. Therefore, it was only the second round, but they were already dancing and cheering. Perhaps because of their influence, the atmosphere gradually became more enthusiastic. When the Bai family received the news, Bai Gongxi's biological mother directly fainted. When she finally woke up, she hurriedly informed Scholar Bai, and then rushed to Li Hongyuan's manor. Scholar Bai also arrived at about the same time, wearing his official robe. Hearing the deafening cheers and extremely enthusiastic cheers, Scholar Bai and his wife's eyes instantly turned red. Their hearts were filled with hatred, and their eyes were about to split open. Their only son was gone, but these people still acted as if nothing had happened, and played so happily. Master, master. Bai Gongxi's biological mother cried until her liver and intestines were cut to pieces, and she almost didn't want to live. Madam, rest assured. No matter who it is, I will definitely seek justice for my son. Scholar Bai gnashed his teeth, and it seemed that he would absolutely not let this matter go. When Li Hongyuan got the news, he still gave face and personally went to see him. Bai Xian was usually very tactful. He was very respectful to these princes. He did not treat them differently. However, when he saw Li Hongyuan, he did not have the slightest trace of his usual tactfulness. Li Hongyuan was a true life and death enemy. What kind of person was Li Hongyuan? Basically, he was not the kind of person to greet people with a smiling face. Naturally, he would not speak nicely to people who were angry at him. If it were not for the fact that his uncle's only son died in his manor, and he was more or less responsible for it, it would be strange that he would talk to him. If it were someone else, even if it was his responsibility, he would not expect him to do anything. When Scholar Bai saw Li Hongyuan's indifferent face, his anger and hatred in his heart jumped up, and he no longer concealed his feelings in his heart. Your Highness, aren't you afraid of retribution for acting like this? Li Hongyuan looked at Scholar Bai, and his posture was casual and calm. Your son was not killed by me. Why should I be afraid of retribution? You and your father are not responsible for today's ending, right? Not only do you want benefits, but you also want fame. Because you're too good at everything, you've won Imperial Father's favor. If you want to deal with this prince, you won't be able to do it under normal circumstances. Who better than using your Bai family as a raft? As long as something happens to your Bai family, it will erode Imperial Father's good impression of you. Even if you use the Bai family to frame this prince, it will not shake this prince's foundation. Who would touch your Bai family for no reason? Don't you people pay attention to the middle ground? Since you have done things to the extreme, you should have some awareness. Scholar Bai's teeth chattered. He really wanted to eat Li Hongyuan alive. Li Hongyuan sneered, "Come, take Scholar Bai to see his son." Scholar Bai, please do as you please. This prince will not accompany you. After saying that, he directly flicked his sleeves and left. Scholar Bai had lost half of his mind because of the pain of losing his son. Now he was stimulated by Li Hongyuan, and he was going crazy. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he was a malicious spirit that had sworn to take revenge. Li Hongyuan, Li Hongyuan. He would not let the real culprit go, and Li Hongyuan would definitely not let him go either. To trample and abuse others so casually, what right did he have? What right did he have? Seeing her son's bloody body, Scholar Bai's wife directly fainted. Scholar Bai also felt dizzy. He fiercely bit his tongue and forced it to bleed. Only then did he manage to stay awake. The coroner did not find the result of the autopsy. Master Bai's body was directly taken away, which was expected. https://11/11807120811707 HTML. Chapter 483. When Li Hongyuan returned, the other brothers saw that his complexion didn't seem to have changed. They didn't know what was going on, but but their hearts and lungs were scratching uncomfortably. Each and every one of them couldn't sit still and wanted to return to the capital to see if things would develop as they expected. However, if the living king of hell didn't say to disperse, who could so easily pat their buttocks and leave? Even if Wang was currently in trouble, who could guarantee that he wouldn't be able to escape again? If by any chance he was still as lucky as before, at this time, throwing stones at someone who's down the well, wouldn't that be waiting for him to settle the accounts after autumn? As for whether it would offend Scholar Bai or not, the Bai family was reasonable and scrupulously abided by the rules. If they were offended, then they would be offended. Besides, there were so many people, what could the Bai family do? Could they just find trouble with some people? Right now, the hatred was all on Wang, so they didn't have the leisure to care about them. Therefore, they only needed to restrain their thoughts and quietly watch the show. Was this the so-called people who are kind, will be bullied? At the beginning, that former cabinet elder of the Bai family didn't know that something had happened to his only grandson. After the corpses were carried back, the entire residence was in turmoil and chaos. Dark clouds hung overhead, the masters were mourning, the servants were grieving, as if that Bai Gongzi alone had brought death to the entire family. Don't talk about laughter, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Cabinet Elder Bai also finally knew about this matter. He didn't manage to catch his breath and almost lost his life. Again, he called for the imperial physician, filled the prescription and so on. And this matter, as if it had grown wings, spread through the streets and alleys of the capital at the fastest speed. When Lu Qingdi found out about this matter, he was in the middle of reviewing memorials. On the spot, he threw his red brush and smashed the memorials. His temples were throbbing with pain. Where is that evil creature? Tell him to get his ass into the palace immediately. He couldn't stop roaring. The people inside the palace practically rolled and crawled out of the palace. Then, when they learned that Wang was still at the manor, how could they dare to be negligent? They quickly rode out of the palace on horseback, entered the manor, and entered the range of the horse farm. At that moment, they experienced the grief and indignation of the Baishir couple. However, this imperial eunuch did not dare to say a single word. Those thoughts were quickly thrown out of his mind. He did not dare to let the living king of hell come to see him and could only find him himself. In the luxurious private room, he saw the leisurely Wang. That was even more leisurely than the other Wang Ye. His heart inexplicably shuddered. This servant greets the Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan didn't respond at all. The situation was a bit awkward. The others looked at each other, but they didn't say anything. Instead, they looked at Prince Kong. Their meaning couldn't be more obvious. He was the boss, so it was natural for him to speak up at this time. Prince Kong secretly cursed in his heart. A group of disgraceful things. How come he didn't see them being this modest? Who would have thought that he was the boss? Although he wasn't very smart, but at this moment, he also knew that whoever opened their mouth right now would likely be remembered by this bastardly Hongyuan. However, he couldn't ignore it. They didn't have the same willful right as Li Hongyuan. Prince Kong suppressed his anger as much as possible and didn't vent his emotions. Dai Gonggong has come, I wonder what is the matter. This Dai Gonggong also wanted to scold people. Asking when he already knew the answer, there really wasn't a good thing among the emperor's sons, but he didn't dare to show it on his face, replying to Wang Ye, the emperor summons Wang Yi. Okay, the name was called, so the others also didn't mix in. However, the person who should cooperate still didn't cooperate and looked at the field seriously. Interrupting and building bridges, Prince Kong also watched from the sidelines. Fu Huang's inner chamberlain wanted to report to Fu Huang, so he did what he needed to do. Naturally, the rest had nothing to do with him. The current day was a pleasant time, but that inner chamberlain Dai's forehead was faintly sweaty. If it was anyone else, these inner chamberlains would be very willing to run errands. Basically, they would be able to get a lot of rewards, except for Jin Qin Wang. Although sometimes Jin Qin Wang's rewards could be more than 10 or 100 other people's rewards added together, Jin Qin Wang's temperament was treacherous and unpredictable. No one dared to gamble on his good mood for the sake of those rewards. Therefore, this task was to be avoided if possible, and if they couldn't avoid it, they could only pray for their own good fortune. Dai Gonggang braced himself. Jin Qin Wang Yi, the emperor wants you to return to the capital as soon as possible and enter the palace. The living king of hell was completely entranced and didn't know anything else. Wang Ye, Jin Qin Wang Yi, what are you screaming for? Do you think Ben Wang is deaf? Li Hongyuan finally opened his mouth and it sounded a little chilly. Dai Gonggang fell to his knees with a plop. Wang Ye, please forgive me, this servant. Okay, when the competition is over, Ben Wang will go see Fu Wang. You either shut up for Ben Wang or immediately scram for Ben Wang. If he went back to report now, without Jin Qin Wang, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would be attacked by the emperor. Because of his incompetence, he would be suppressed by the other colleagues and stay behind to wait for Jin Qin Wang to return together. The emperor had gone to take care of Jin Qin Wang and probably didn't have the leisure to come and ask him. But if he stayed behind, there was no small risk. After weighing the pros and cons, he still decided to stay and obediently shrink to the side to be the background, striving to not be noticed by Jin Qin Wang. And Dai Gonggang's words and deeds once again stimulated the other Qin Wang's hearts. Because the people close to Luqingdi were obviously the lowest existence, but the other people basically had to be courteous to some extent, including them, these powerful Qin Wang princes. They were respectful, but other than that, there was nothing else. On the contrary, if you offended them, perhaps they would put medicine in their eyes in front of Fu Wang. However, Li Hongyuan once again became an exception. They feared him. In front of him, they were like his grandchildren, lowering themselves into the mud. Perhaps they themselves didn't know, but to some extent, their fear of Li Hongyuan had already surpassed that of Fu Wang. It was as if Li Hongyuan was superior to them at all times and in all aspects. They were both the emperor's sons, but with such a huge difference in treatment, no matter how hard they tried to persuade themselves, they still wouldn't be able to calm down. Because they were powerless to change anything now, they could only think about the future. However, some of them also understood that their fantasies about the future were just fantasies. In reality, they couldn't do anything and were nothing. After the second round, everyone originally thought that it would end, but unexpectedly, Li Hongyuan let them rest for half a second before starting the third round. After that, they would rest again before starting the final round. For those who did not know, the impact was not big. In their view, Jin Qin Wang was not anxious, so why should they be anxious? Whatever happened, it would not fall on their heads. Thus, what should be done was done. Knowing that Luqingdi's men had come in batches, they hoped that Li Hongyuan would go even further and infuriate the emperor. On the other hand, they felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. When it was finally over, Li Hongyuan was willing to let them go. Everyone hurriedly rushed back to the capital, and it was almost time to close the city gates. Li Hongyuan was still leisurely. Beside him, Luqingdi had already sent a third wave of people. Yu Zhongqing personally came with an imperial edict. Luqingdi repeatedly asked Li Hongyuan to enter the palace, and even issued an imperial edict. This was an unprecedented matter. It was enough to see that the situation had already reached an extraordinary point. At this time, Jingwan had already sat beside Li Hongyuan. Why don't Wang Ye go back first? This concubine will tidy up and wait until the city gates open in the morning before going back. What's the hurry? When you're done tidying up, that's when we leave. The city gates will be closed and opened. It's not a big deal. Otherwise, we can wait together and go back tomorrow. Li Hongyuan said rather lazily. Jingwan pinched Li Hongyuan without a trace. Everything should stop before going too far. After all, that person was in power now. If he was completely angered, it would not be good for anyone. Wang Ye, don't talk nonsense. Let's go now. There's nothing to tidy up. This concubine will leave 2 people behind. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. So be it. Compared with the previous people who were in a hurry, Li Hongyuan's group still moved at a normal speed. No matter how anxious the people from the palace were, they did not dare to urge them. Of course, Yu Zhongqing, who had submitted to Li Hongyuan, was calm. He believed that Li Hongyuan could still get away this time. On the contrary, the Bai family, who was ready to fight against him to the end, would not have a good ending. Li Hongyuan wanted to go back to his mansion first to rest and drink tea. However, under the threat of Jingwan, he went to the palace first with Yu Zhongqing and the others. Li Hongyuan entered Emperor Lu Qingdi's imperial study. There were 2 people kneeling inside. There was no doubt that they were the former cabinet elder of the Bai family and his son, Secretary Bai. Speaking of which, according to the predetermined future, Secretary Bai would also be one of the cabinet elders in the future. Not to mention other things, the father and son were quite impressive. As far as Li Hongyuan knew, the former cabinet elder had just woken up and was trembling to enter the palace. His only son, Secretary Bai, accompanied him. The father and son had been kneeling in front of the emperor for more than 4 hours. Li Hongyuan wanted to admire the old man, but in fact, the former cabinet elder could not bear it. At this moment, he seemed to be dying. Obviously, such a state was extremely lethal to Emperor Lu Qingdi. This was his uncle, so naturally, he was extremely distressed. He had been kneeling until now. No matter what he said before, Emperor Lu Qingdi did not agree. At this moment, he even agreed to what the father and son of the Bai family did not say. At least when Li Hongyuan came in, Emperor Lu Qingdi stood in front of his uncle and tried to help him up. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. He was not even 20 years old. He died so miserably. Tears streamed down his face. His voice was hoarse and he was on the verge of collapse. He was so pitiful. Uncle, please get up first. I will give you justice. Your Majesty, Li Hongyuan looked at him, unmoved, as if he was watching a farce. When Emperor Lu Qingdi finally saw Li Hongyuan had been standing for a long time. Your son pays his respects to Imperial Father. Li Hongyuan bowed lightly. You vile spawn. Do you even put me in your eyes? Why aren't you kneeling down? Li Hongyuan lifted his eyelids. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He lifted his robe and knelt down. Seeing him like this, Emperor Lu Qingdi was so angry that he wanted to slap him to death. However, looking at his face, he could not bear to do it. He suppressed his anger and said, What do you want to say about today's matter? Li Hongyuan sneered, What do I want to say? The height of the precious beast garden's wall is high enough and very sturdy. Not to mention 1 or 2 tigers, even if there were 100 of them, those beasts would not be able to escape unless someone deliberately let them out. Your son has no enmity with Madame Bai, and we rarely come into contact. It is clear that your son has been in the limelight recently. Someone wants to deal with your son. Madame Bai is just a pawn chosen by the other party. They chose him and not others. It's fine that Scholar Bai did not want to find out the truth when he arrived at the manor. Instead, he first showed his attitude to your son. Elder Bai is also ridiculous. He did not care about anything and first came to you to complain tearfully. Then, he directly held on to your son and refused to let go. You want an explanation? Some things are already clear. You are delaying the investigation. So, this prince wants to ask what Madame Bai means. What enmity does this prince have with them? Being attacked by Li Hongyuan like this, the two people from the Bai family were so angry that they trembled. They pointed at Li Hongyuan. You. Li Hongyuan directly stood up and flicked his sleeves. If you want to put a label on this prince, it's troublesome. Take out the evidence. Even if you want to fabricate evidence, it's troublesome to put on an act and investigate the matter. Without a reason, this prince will not admit it. Bastard! Lu Qingdi shouted angrily. Li Hongyuan looked straight at Lu Qingdi. Compared with his previous expressionless face, he was now cold. What I said just now was also for father. If father also thinks that it's all my fault, take out the evidence. Or, father, for the sake of your relationship, you will listen to whatever they say and give them whatever they want. I, your son, can also be sacrificed without hesitation. Then, father, you can just issue an edict to punish me. After all, you are the emperor and I am not even a subject. Wealth and life are just a few words from you. Anyway, some things have already happened for more than 20 years and I don't care about it. After saying this, he directly flicked his sleeves and left. Lu Qingdi was stunned. He did not understand what his son meant. Thinking of a certain possibility, he could not help but take 2 steps back. He knew. Did he really know? But, how could it be, how could it be? Li Hongyuan walked to the door and stopped. Oh. He turned back and looked at the 2 people of the Bai family. The whole capital city knows that if people respect me, I will return the favor. If you insist on not letting me go and don't want to find out the real culprit, I will definitely make your Bai family restless before I am stepped on. After that, he left quite decisively. The father and son of the Bai family were shocked. Lu Qingdi frowned. In fact, Lu Qingdi was very clear that no matter how much he gave his son, he still owed him. He owed him the right of succession from the beginning. And it was he who caused all this. His son had never wanted to fight for the throne. He was a little confused before. But if he knew about his special birth, wouldn't everything make sense? The more Lu Qingdi thought about it, the more he felt that it was so. However, except for himself, only Consort Su knew about it. The others were all dead. If Yuan He knew, there was no doubt that it was Consort Su who told him. Lu Qingdi was burning with anger. That woman really had a lot of guts. The father and son of the Bai family saw that Lu Qingdi's expression was not right. They panicked. Your Majesty, Lu Qingdi looked at them. There was no more grief in his eyes, nor was there an attitude of absolute support for them. Uncle, go back and recuperate. I will work with the governor's office, the Ministry of Justice, and the Supreme Court to investigate and find out the real murderer. As the saying goes, the dead can't be brought back to life. Uncle, please restrain your grief. If you don't take care of your body like today, I will be heartbroken. These words seemed to be concerned, but the father and son of the Bai family understood that this clearly carried the meaning of warning. They used their affection to cry in front of him. It was also a kind of threat. Yes, in Lu Qingdi's eyes, it was a threat. Because he was the emperor, if he gave, you can take it. If he didn't give, you can't take the initiative to ask. The hearts of the father and son of the Bai family turned cold. Originally, the situation was good and was advantageous to their Bai family. But when Jin Qinhuang came, he only said a few words and completely overturned the situation. They were shocked by Jin Qinhuang's power and also shocked by Jin Qinhuang's position in Lu Qingdi's heart. Your Majesty is like this, but this subject doesn't deserve it. This subject only wants justice. https://11/11/11807/12207674 M. Chapter 484. Your Majesty, this is too much for this subject. This subject only wants justice, that's all. Well, I know. You can go back first. This time, the father and son did not dare to act shamelessly. No matter how they tried to persuade him, it was useless. Secretary Bach supported his father. In fact, after kneeling for such a long time, he was not much better than his father. He was trembling and could not stand up at all. After suffering so much but not achieving the expected result, how would he feel? Luchingdi looked at him and asked the eunuchs to help him up and send him back to the Bai family. After they left, Luchingdi said, "Summon the governor of the capital city, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice to the palace immediately." Luchingdi said. He sat back behind the plan and continued to read the memorials. However, in his current state, he could not read them. He threw the memorials aside. He was so irritable, depressed, and angry that the eunuchs wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, an eunuch came out and asked, "Your Majesty, it's very late. Do you want to call for dinner?" Because of the father and son of the Bai family, Luchingdi missed the dinner time. Obviously, he was not in the mood to eat before. Luchingdi rubbed between his eyebrows and said, "Call for dinner." He directly moved to the side hall and said, "When the 3 ministers come, bring them here directly." The eunuchs all breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Luchingdi did not vent his anger on them. Li Hongyuan walked out of the palace with a cold face. Along the way, one could feel the cold air whooshing from afar. No one dared to approach him because it was already dark. Sometimes, it was hard to notice. Therefore, even if they were walking towards him, they would all stop in their tracks and turn. If they really couldn't avoid him, they would quickly retreat a little, either standing or kneeling. They didn't dare to breathe too loudly and were unusually respectful. Li Hongyuan walked straight past them, completely ignoring them. It was better to be ignored. It was definitely 1,000 times better than being noticed. Li Hongyuan went out of the palace and boarded the carriage. His exposed emotions disappeared without a trace in an instant. However, since he didn't say anything, the carriage could still stay where it was. Because the Bai father and son left not long after him, although it was slightly slower due to the inconvenience of movement, they were still carried out in a palanquin. When they learned that the carriage of Jin Qin Wang Fu was still there and had not left, the 2 people couldn't help but shiver. There was always an unpleasant feeling, always feeling that they had provoked someone who should not be provoked. When the 2 of them got off the palanquin, they happened to see Li Hongyuan's carriage with the curtains pulled open. Because there were no lights in the carriage, they couldn't see the situation inside. However, they felt that there was a pair of beast-like eyes inside, flashing in the darkness as if it was hunting, and the father and son were the prey it was staring at. His knees were already hurting to the bone, and now his legs were weak. If he wasn't supported, he might have fallen to the ground. She had long heard of Jin Qin Wang's illustrious reputation and had also seen his methods of dealing with people on certain occasions. However, in the end, she hadn't come into contact with him nor had she personally experienced his methods. Now, there was a kind of terrifying feeling. Return to the Fu. Li Hongyuan's emotionless voice came from the carriage, and the coachman in front of the carriage immediately raised his whip. Looking at the carriage that was going further and further away, the father and son's hearts were filled with varying degrees of regret. However, after losing his only grandson, how could this person still have any rationality to speak of? When Li Hongyuan returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu, Jingwan had already ordered people to prepare the meal. She didn't feel surprised that Li Hongyuan returned so quickly. In any case, this kind of thing, for her, was already used to it. Because she already had a plan in her heart, Jingwan wasn't worried. And Li Hongyuan's emotions were all for others to see. When facing Jingwan, he couldn't be bad and did what he should do. At the same time, the governor of the capital magistrate, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice had already arrived at the palace 3 days ago. Although they had already gone to the yamen, when the emperor summoned them, even if they were in a daze in the middle of the night, they still had to get up and enter the palace. What's more, after today's matter, they already had a plan in their hearts. Lu Qingdi let them eat together. Regardless of whether they ate or not, they all had to sit down and thank the emperor for his grace. Lu Qingdi was in a bad mood and hastily ate a bit. When he stopped, the other 3 also followed suit. Lu Qingdi wiped his mouth and threw away the handkerchief. Today's matter, you should already know. I'll give you 3 days' time. Zhen wants a satisfactory result. According to reason, the moment a person died, the capital magistrate should have taken over. However, Li Hongyuan didn't let anyone report the case. The Bai family took the body back and didn't want to report the case. Li Hongyuan investigated their own internal problems. The Bai family only wanted Lu Qingdi to uphold justice. They were too grieved and too angry. Perhaps they had forgotten. Lu Qingdi only needed to say a few words and the following 3 people had a headache. Because they didn't take over at the first moment, there would be a lot of gaps in the middle. For example, the people related to Jin Qinhuang's manor and the people serving by Gongzi were all very important. And now, it was unknown whether these people were still alive or not. After all, if the master wanted to kill these people, it was just a matter of a few words. However, no matter how much Shili complained incessantly, his mouth could only agree. In fact, smart people knew that there were only 2 situations in this matter. First, it was a coincidence. The Bai family's boy was unlucky. Others were fine, but he died. Second, someone schemed against Jin Qinhuang. It was nothing more than borrowing the Bai family's hand to deal with Jin Qinhuang. If it was the former, the Bai family would definitely not let it go and bite Jin Qinhuang to death. This was not what the emperor wanted to see. If it was the latter, then who was the one who schemed against Jin Qinhuang? In fact, there was still a range. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to investigate. If those related people died, it would be even more difficult to investigate. And the final result was also not what the emperor wanted to see. And between these 2, the possibility of the latter was far greater than the former. And even if it was the latter, if the investigation didn't lead to the cause, the Bai family would definitely bite Jin Qinhuang to death. More importantly, she had to satisfy the emperor. What was the most important thing to satisfy the emperor? To put it bluntly, this kind of thing shouldn't be investigated in the open. The emperor himself would determine the outcome. The capital governor and the minister of justice might have some concerns and didn't dare to go through some procedures. But the 5th Tai Ching of the Supreme Court was famous for being upright and plain-spoken when facing a case. He would investigate it as he should. Because of the special situation, Master Bai's funeral hadn't been held yet. The Bai family didn't even hang out the white banner. Naturally, no one would come to offer condolences. So, it was certain that the body hadn't been buried yet. It was just tidied up and changed into decent clothes. From the outside, it didn't look that scary. In fact, the people who went to the manor with Master Bai were indeed beaten to death by the furious Madam Secretary Bai, who couldn't find a way to vent her anger. Their relatives and friends were not allowed to collect the bodies. They were directly thrown into the mass grave and buried hastily. There was no value in itself, but the people and things related to them still had to be investigated. Fortunately, the people who belonged to Jin Qinhuang didn't die. On the contrary, the people who wanted to commit suicide didn't die. The suspicious points of Master Bai's body also had to be investigated. So, an autopsy was necessary. People couldn't rest in peace even after death. How could the Bai family allow it? They cried to the heavens and fought to the earth. The others were in a dilemma, but the minister of the Supreme Court was determined. The people of the Bai family couldn't wait to eat him alive. Their eyes were filled with poison. The fifth Tai Ching didn't flinch. As long as I am still in this position, I have to do things according to the rules. Secretary Bai doesn't need to look at me like this. If you really don't like me, you can go to the emperor to complain. If the emperor dismisses me, I have nothing to do with it. In Jingwan's impression, the fifth Tai Ching was an amiable old man. He liked to stroke his beard. From time to time, he would break a strand. He also liked flowers and plants. Occasionally, he would be like an old child. He would snatch things from his grandfather. He would quarrel until his face turned red. Even though she knew that he had a bad temper, that even Luqingdi had a headache in some aspects, she had never really seen it. However, when it really showed, people couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Secretary Bai was infuriated by the fifth Grand Eunuch, but he really could not be involved in this case. After all, the fifth Grand Eunuch was investigating the case according to the normal procedure. He was in the right no matter what. If he was involved in this case, Secretary Bai would be regarded as taking advantage of his relationship with Emperor Luqingdi. At that time, not only Secretary Bai would be criticized, but even Emperor Luqingdi would be criticized by all kinds of ministers. It would be strange if Emperor Luqingdi was happy at that time. Secretary Bai clenched his back teeth. He could only be isolated and watch the coroner make trouble on his dead son. His wife cried and threw a tantrum. She had already lost her image. She cursed the fifth Tai Ching to die a horrible death and to have no descendants. The fifth Tai Ching looked coldly with a straight face. He was extraordinarily serious. Speaking of which, the fifth Tai Ching was well-mannered. If it were someone else, he might have directly retorted. The Bai family is the one who will have no descendants. Look, even your only son is dead. Could it be that you have done too many evil things to end up like this? It should be noted that the fifth Tai Ching had many children and grandchildren. His family was harmonious, and many of them were successful. In the end, it was the wife of Secretary Bai who fainted from crying. It had to be said that the coroner was quite capable. According to some of the characteristics of the corpse, it could almost be concluded that the deceased had taken some kind of medicine before his death. And the effect of the medicine was probably to replace the organs. According to this clue, they continued to investigate. They really found a servant of the deceased. However, the servant was dead, and the clue was completely broken. If the servant had not been beaten to death by the order of the wife of Secretary Bai, they would have suspected that the wife of Secretary Bai had something to do with the servant. She killed the servant to silence him. Knowing that her recklessness had broken an important clue, the wife of Secretary Bai fainted again. However, when she woke up, she refused to admit her mistake. She did not take good care of her son and caused his death. Didn't such a servant deserve to die? In fact, as expected at the beginning, there was no result at all. Everything pointed to the fact that someone had planned all this. However, every clue, whether it was the people of the Bai family or the people of Li Hongyuan's farm, was broken at some point and could not be investigated further. It was like a thread that was divided into several parts and then cut off together. Since there was no clue, no matter how angry Luqingdi was, the result would be the same. Even though the Bai family was rational and thought that they shouldn't completely vent their anger on Jin Qinhuang, but once they thought that their precious flesh and only seedling was gone, how could they still be rational? Even if they wanted to be rational, other people were either wailing, pointing and gossiping, or rejoicing in other people's misfortune, constantly reminding them, washing away their rationality. When this person's grief and indignation reached a certain degree, they would always involuntarily find a way to vent. The former court elder of the Bai family went to the palace every day. His body was obviously getting worse and it looked like he would die at any time on the way, but he still did not stop. Luchingdi was having a headache. After all, this was his uncle who had helped him a lot. Besides, if he put himself in his uncle's shoes, he could not say anything harsh. However, it was absolutely impossible to put all the blame on his son. Master Bai's body could not just be left there. It had to be buried. Therefore, the Bai family finally hung up the white banner and did the ritual. Other people also came to offer their condolences one after another, especially the in-laws of those grandaunts who had married out. Those grandaunts came back as soon as they knew about the matter. Until now, a few days later, they helped to take care of all kinds of things. They wanted to comfort them and let them restrain their grief. However, the sorrow of a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person was not something that could be eliminated with a simple sentence. Looking at the miserable appearance of the family, people couldn't help but sigh. The Bai family did not have a son before. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, they were often laughed at. And as the wife of Master Bai, even if she gave birth to 4 daughters, she was also called a hen that could not lay eggs. She was scolded and disliked. That kind of grievance, that kind of bitterness, it lasted until the 5th pregnancy when she gave birth to a son. In fact, she was not young anymore. In order to give birth to a son, her husband had long stopped sleeping with her. That child was also calculated by her. When it was born, it was a son. Her position was stable and all the mistakes in the past were as if nothing had happened. That son was old Madame Bai's life. Without a son, it could be said that there was no hope left. Recently, she was going crazy. And this matter, she didn't know how, but it was related to Jingwan again. It seemed that in just one night, all the mistakes were her. Building the horse ranch was her idea. Building a luxurious animal garden was her idea. It was all because of her that Jin Qinhuang became more and more extravagant. If it wasn't for her messy ideas, how could someone die and so on? Jingwan felt her knees hurt. It was simply lying down and getting shot. However, it was not enough to just talk about it. The old madam of the Bai family actually wanted Jingwan to wear mourning clothes for her son and kneel until her son was buried. If Jingwan didn't care about it before, her face would have turned completely cold now. Originally, the Luo family didn't intervene in this matter. However, the Bai family's actions completely angered the Luo family. Luo Peishan directly tore into Scholar Bai in the court. Of course, he didn't do anything to Scholar Bai directly. He was the Minister of Personnel Affairs and was in charge of the officials. As long as the officials were related to the Bai family, especially those sons-in-law of his, he would pull them all out and mercilessly scrutinize them from head to toe. People in the officialdom simply couldn't withstand being scrutinized to death. There was always a bit of a problem with their morality. At this moment, all of them were pulled out by Luo Peishan. There was a problem here. If they didn't pass the assessment, they were not allowed to be promoted. Luo Peishan also didn't use any underhanded tricks. This official is not like some people who like to fabricate nonsense and create something out of nothing. This official has always paid attention to the facts. Scholar Bai said that this official was talking nonsense, but this official can't agree. You must know that these matters are not handled by this official alone. There are so many people in the Ministry of Personnel Affairs and they are all clear about it. Originally, there's no need to report to the emperor about the transfer of officials below the 4th rank. Now that I've brought it out, it's easier for everyone to understand. Although it wasn't an underhanded trick, it was more infuriating to go against the Bai family openly. The Bai family had the emperor as their backer and they knew how to conduct themselves. There were many colleagues who were on good terms with them. However, at this moment, no one stood out. Firstly, if they angered Luo Peishan, they might become the next Bai family. Secondly, if the Bai family vacated their positions, there would be more opportunities for others. Friendship was friendship, but when it came to their own interests, friendship was nothing. Scholar Bai was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Luo Peishan's smile didn't change, but his eyes were cold. In such a situation, Luqingdi chose to be a bystander and didn't say a word. Of course, the Luo family wasn't the only ones who were really angered. The real evil fire in the living hell's heart was accumulated. Once it exploded, it would definitely burn people to death. However, the living hell didn't take any action for the time being. Many people related to the Bai family were in trouble, so old Madame Bai didn't dare to keep pestering Jingwan. However, that didn't mean that the Bai family would stop causing trouble. The former cabinet elder ran to the emperor and requested that the 81 altars built today be used for his grandson's ritual. Luqingdi immediately flew into a rage. If it weren't for the fact that this was his uncle, if it weren't for the fact that he was old and couldn't even stand steadily, Luqingdi would have smashed the inkstone directly on his head. Luqingdi still longed to see the imperial noble consort and asked her to come out to perform the ritual for his nephew. How could a kid like him deserve such honor? Uncle, go back. I'll pretend that I don't know about it. This time, the former Grand Secretary had steeled his heart. Your Majesty, the imperial noble consort is just a nameless orphan girl of unknown origins. You supported her and made her the imperial noble consort, giving her the supreme honor. But to say that she's some fairy of the ninth heaven, it's fine if you just coax the ignorant people, but do you really believe it? Think about how much the Empress Dowager did for you. How much she sacrificed and how much she sacrificed. Do you really have the heart to see her family die out? Luqingdi's face was livid. Of course, he remembered some things in his heart. This was the reason why he had always been kind to the Bai family. But it didn't mean that he was willing to be mentioned in public. Uncle, you've gone too far. My uncle is very good. He has many children and grandchildren. How can the Bai family die out? The Bai family had always been reasonable and sensible. But now, they suddenly exposed it, which made Luqingdi very angry. He suspected that they had been pretending before. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. If he can't reincarnate, his experience will only be the beginning of the Bai family. Do you really have the heart to, enough? Luqingdi shouted angrily, interrupting him. Your Majesty, my grandson died unjustly. He died with his eyes wide open, and his resentment can't be dispelled. You promised to uphold justice for him, but you didn't say anything. You even gave him a religious ceremony, and he wasn't willing to be reincarnated. Your Majesty, the Bai clan is gone, and this old thing doesn't have the face to continue living in this world. Everyone in the Bai clan is ashamed to face their ancestors. It's better for them to die so that they can go down and beg for forgiveness. The former cabinet elder seemed to have lost his mind. Whatever he should say and what he shouldn't say, he screamed it out. To put it bluntly, his goal was still Li Hongyuan. He wanted Li Hongyuan, the murderer, to pay the price and resolve his grandson's grievances. He was also certain that Luqingdi wouldn't give up the altar. This was not only a threat of death, but also the death of everyone in the Bai family. Luqingdi's face was gloomy. He didn't know what happened to make his uncle act like a different person. Even if he got what he wanted, would the Bai family have a good life in the future? However, if this continued, Luqingdi's image in the public would be affected. When Li Hongyuan heard the news, he knew that it was about time. Is it necessary for the Bai family to do this? Jingwan was confused. The Bai family's only child is gone. This means that the previous plan is useless. It is not wise to destroy the friendship between the Bai family and my father. But what if someone made a promise to the Bai family? How long can my father stay on the throne? How long can the Bai family exist? Even if the Bai family is hated by my father, as long as the Bai family is still alive, there is a possibility for the Bai family to rise again. If the Bai family removes a big rock like me for the person who made the promise, the Bai family will be a meritorious official. Hearing this, Jingwan also understood. Is Yuan going to do it? https://11/11807/123594776. Chapter 485. Naturally, we have to resolve this matter before Fu Huang makes his decision. It's time to teach some people what it means to draw water with a bamboo basket. Mu and get ready to go to Bai Fu. Li Hongyuan got up, brushed his robe, and looked at Jingwan. It should be a good show. Wan, do you want to go and take a look? Weren't you curious about what this husband was going to do from the start? Just watch the scene, you don't have to listen to other people's retelling. Jingwan thought about it. Gossiping about this kind of thing, it was indeed more interesting to be the first to watch the scene. Moreover, Bai family had dragged her into the water before. If there was a chance to take revenge, it seemed that there was no need to be polite. As for why it was gossiping, Jingwan thought so anyway. Thus, okay, let's go together. Li Hongyuan's clothes were barely passable. He was wearing the usual black brocade robe with auspicious clouds. Jingwan's clothes were more excessive. Although it wasn't bright red, the color was more colorful. It was definitely not suitable for mourning. Although they were going to watch the show, but in the end, the deceased was the most important. Wouldn't it be inappropriate? Jingwan's clothes were chosen by Gong Mama, who was usually the most upright and wouldn't make mistakes easily. When Jingwan raised her doubts, Li Hongyuan also said that there was no problem. Thus, Jingwan didn't have to worry so much. However, could she suspect that there was also a problem with that by Gongzi? The so-called taking the firewood from under the cauldron was actually referring to Bai Gongzi himself. At this moment, she was too lazy to think about it. In any case, the mystery would be revealed soon. It could be imagined that when Jin Qinwang Fu's guards of honor majestically appeared in front of the Bai family's gate, and then saw Jingwan's clothes, the Bai family's expression would be as if they had swallowed a fly. It was as ugly as it could be. However, Li Hongyuan was still a prince, so they didn't dare to say anything. However, some people thought maliciously, go ahead and be arrogant. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. Without your respected status, even if the emperor wants to protect you, you will be ridiculed and ridiculed. Maybe now is your last chance to show off. Li Hongyuan randomly summoned a member of the Bai family and brought them to the mourning hall. With the deterrence of the living king of hell, no one dared to confront him head-on, even if they were at the end of their rope. The servant of the Bai family who was called out immediately trembled in fear. In the mourning hall, the only proper master of the Bai family was old Madame Bai. The rest were her daughter and son-in-law, as well as a few of the more respectable concubines of the Bai family. Seeing Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, old Madame Bai, who was like a walking corpse, instantly turned into a ferocious ghost. Her face was abnormally ferocious. If it weren't for her daughters stopping her, she might have pounced on them to kill them. The Bai family's land is lowly and can't bear the trampling of Jin Qinwang and Wang Fei. Indeed. Li Hongyuan bluntly replied. As the saying goes, even a clay figurine has 3 points of anger. The living king of hell was so hateful. The eldest daughter of the Bai family stood up, her face solemn, but she didn't lose her etiquette. She squatted down. Wang Ye and Wang Fei's status is honorable and naturally is not something lowly people like us can reach. However, since Wang Ye and Wang Fei are here today, please give this younger brother a bit of respect and a bit of peace. Wang Ye is from the imperial family and should be the role model of the world. Wang Fei is from a scholarly family. Who wouldn't praise the Luo family for their good upbringing? Everyone understood the meaning behind her words. Perhaps they should praise her for her courage. Jingwan's gaze paused on this woman. Regardless of other aspects, the Bai family's upbringing of their children was impeccable. No matter if it was the person in front of her or the one lying in the coffin, the pampered only child didn't become a dandy. It was enough to show that they had put in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, a good hand of cards was ruined. Or rather, they met the living king of hell. They didn't stand on the same side as the living king of hell, so this good hand of cards was scattered by the living king of hell. Li Hongyuan's gaze lightly swept over. If people respect Ben Wang will return them with a foot. The Bai family has repeatedly bullied Ben Wang. What, do you expect Ben Wang to repay evil with kindness? What position do you have to dare to speak to Ben Wang like this? As a married woman, you should also consider your husband's family. The woman's face instantly paled. Her husband clearly had hope of being promoted this year. Because of the Minister of Personnel Affairs, he didn't have any hope. It looked like he was going to be sent out. If the place where he was sent out became that barren and barren land, wouldn't she be blamed to death by her husband's family? She was inwardly annoyed at herself for not being able to control herself. Her husband pulled her from behind, asking Wang Yi for forgiveness. It was this official who didn't discipline him well. Another day, this official will definitely come to apologize. He didn't want his current situation to be even worse. Even now, Wang Yi is still as elegant as before. This old man really admires you. A slightly trembling old voice sounded. Bai family's Minister Qian was supported by Scholar Bai. Behind him, there were also many distinguished guests. Hearing that Jin Qinwang had arrived, these people couldn't wait to come and watch a good show. Men and women alike. However, seeing that the emperor seemed to have already compromised and only lacked an imperial edict, Jin Qinwang was still so calm and composed. Could it be that he still had some tricks up his sleeve? However, regardless of whether there were any, it was best not to provoke Jin Qinwang. Go, light a stick of incense for Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Minister Qian walked closer and said to his son. Scholar Bai naturally obeyed. He personally lit 2 sticks of incense and personally offered it. His eyes were dark and heavy. Wang Yi, please. Let my grandson rest in peace for a stick of incense. As for the emperor, perhaps this old man can also say a few words of comfort. Li Hongyuan glanced at the incense in front of him and suddenly smiled. If it really is the seed of the Bai family, Ben Wang's incense is also fine. But it's just a lowly seed, is it worthy? When Li Hongyuan's words came out, it shocked everyone. Li Hongyuan, you dare to fabricate this kind of thing. This old man will not rest until you die. Even though he was old, at this time, he was also like a lion on the verge of death who wanted to fight for his life. Li Hongyuan didn't care. His eyes fell on old Madame Bai and he smiled carelessly. Fabricate. Whether it's fabricate or not, you might as well ask this Bai family's mistress. In the coffin, is it Scholar Bai's seed, or is it a lowly seed that she seduced and stole in order to consolidate her status? Everyone's eyes uniformly fell on old Madame Bai. Her face was deathly pale, her eyes were filled with fear and her whole body was trembling. It was obvious that the fear was more than the anger. Looking at this reaction, could it be that Jin Qinwang was right? The bad premonition in Minister Qian and Scholar Bai's heart expanded to infinity. The secret that had been kept for more than 10 years had always been well hidden. The people who knew about this matter couldn't guarantee that they would keep their mouths shut and had been dealt with cleanly. As time went by, old Madame Bai herself had forgotten this matter. Her son was the Bai family seed and she gradually lost her vigilance. Now that it was suddenly exposed, she was caught off guard and she wasn't someone who had undergone strict training. Her first reaction was to reveal her true emotions and she couldn't react for a long time. Scholar Bai, who was still holding the incense, only felt that his eyes were going black. If he had forced Jin Qin Wang to lower his head just now, his heart would still be a little complacent. But now, he felt that he was a big joke. The incense in his hand was crushed and his whole body was trembling. He took a big stride towards his originally dignified and virtuous wife and slapped her. "Slut, slut, slut," he roared hysterically. Old Madame Bai was directly knocked to the ground by this slap. She seemed to have finally regained her senses. Lao Yi, it's not, Jin Qin Wang is spouting venomous slander. You have to believe me. She climbed up and wanted to pull Scholar Bai's clothes. Scholar Bai was already mad with anger. He kicked the woman on the ground with all his might. Speaking of which, old Madame Bai was already a person who was almost 60 years old. How could she withstand this kind of punches and kicks? However, no one dared to step forward to stop him. The servants who served her were trembling uncontrollably. Her daughter was also completely scared silly. Elder Bai Qian tightly grasped the walking stick in his hand and clenched his teeth to support himself. Compared to his son, he was not much better. In any case, he still had a little bit of rationality left. But it was already too late to stop it. It was impossible to gloss over it by deceiving himself. His whole life's clean reputation was ruined just like this, completely ruined. Enough, Elder Bai Qian opened his mouth in a trembling voice. But it was clear that his son did not hear him at all. He trembled as he stepped forward, unable to lift his feet. He was practically rubbing the ground as he walked. He barely managed to raise his walking stick and hit over, disgraceful thing. Scholar Bai finally stopped and looked at Elder Bai Qian, father. His anger reached the extreme and also his grief reached the extreme. Then, tears flowed down his old face. His eyes were filled with disbelief and he seemed to be asking why. Father. Old Madame Bai could be said to be unusually miserable now. She crawled up and wanted to grab the hem of her father-in-law's clothes. Listen to your daughter-in-law, it's really not. Elder Bai Qian directly swung his walking stick and hit her head. Fortunately, he did not use enough strength. Otherwise, just this hit alone might have taken her life. Then, he pointed at the coffin, open it, strip him and throw him into the mass grave. Send someone to guard it. If the wild dogs haven't eaten him clean, he's not allowed to come back. Just a moment ago, he was enjoying all the glory and was about to be buried in the Bai family's ancestral grave and enjoy the Bai family's incense. In the blink of an eye, he was left with nothing. Even his bones were about to be devoured by the wild dogs. Old Madame Bai did not try to stop her. She simply tried to explain herself time and time again. However, this also confirmed that her son was not a part of the Bai family. If he was, and if she was innocent, why wouldn't she want to protect him? Speaking of which, when old Madame Bai's mother-in-law was still alive, she did not have a son. Her status in the Bai family was precarious. She was suppressed by one concubine after another until she could not even raise her head. She did not expect that in her 40s, she would give birth to a son and immediately turn the tables. She could hold her head high and even forget about the past. She raised the concubine's daughter and the other concubines well. Everyone said that she had a good life and was virtuous. She was known as a model woman. However, the reality was that she had an affair and gave birth to a bastard. Thinking about it now, how was she virtuous and magnanimous? She was clearly guilty. Those who envied her and praised her in the past, especially those who were close to her, only felt equally embarrassed now. They were too ashamed to show their faces. They hated her to death and were also disgusted to death. When that bastard was born, he looked strong and chubby. No matter how I looked at him, he didn't look like he was born prematurely at 7 months. Now that I think about it, what prematurely? He was probably full term. When that bastard was still in the womb and after he was born, the Bai family used all kinds of reasons to deal with many people. They even treated him as their precious son and could not tolerate the slightest bit of carelessness. I'm afraid they used the excuse of dealing with those who knew about it and sold them. I'm afraid they have already become a pile of dirt. I still thought that she was a good person. I didn't expect her to be such a person. She's dirty and rotten on the inside. Her methods of deceiving people outside are also first class. Secretary Bai was cuckolded by the person beside him and he did not even realize it. He treated that bastard like a precious pearl in the palm of his hand for more than 10 years. He looked like such a smart person, but it turns out that he is also a stupid person. Maybe he sensed something, but he got carried away by the fact that he finally got a son. Even if there were some suspicious points, he ignored them. He must have gone crazy thinking about his son. Such words were whispered by the onlookers. The Bai family wished they could find a hole to hide in. It was too shameful. Old Madame Bai wanted to explain, but at the same time, she said that they were talking nonsense. In the end, she could not take it anymore. Her eyes rolled up and she fainted. At this moment, it was indeed better for her to be unconscious than to be awake. Jingwan looked at it coldly. She did not expect that the problem really came from Master Bai. It was really a drastic measure. Since Master Bai was not the son of the Bai family had no reason to force the emperor to punish her husband. Even if Master Bai's father had some status, he was still an illegitimate son. His death was not a big deal. Besides, according to what someone said just now, old Madame Bai must have seduced a servant to give birth to Master Bai. That meant that Master Bai was a slave. After all, even if the King of Hell threw a slave to feed a tiger, he would only be criticized for being cruel. Emperor Luqingdi would only scold him and punish him. There would be no real punishment. This was the cruel reality brought about by the difference in status. However, in this way, there was no meaning in investigating the real culprit behind the scenes. Even if the culprit was dealing with Jin Qinhuang, however, wasn't Jin Qinhuang fine? In fact, everyone knew in their hearts who was the culprit. It was none other than those few people. Luqingdi himself also pretended to be deaf and mute, not wanting to face reality. Didn't you see that the joint efforts of the capital government, the Supreme Court, and the Ministry of Justice did not find anything? Luqingdi also did not say anything. No result was the result that he wanted. Jingwan had no sympathy for old Madame Bai. Under the harsh and cruel background, since she did such a thing, she must be aware that she would pay a heavy price if she was exposed. But Master Bai, the Bai family was too heartless. After all, he was held in the palm of their hands for more than 10 years. He did not know anything. What was wrong with that? Moreover, he was already dead. Why was there a need to torture him like this? From this point of view, Master Bai's death was fortunate. If he was alive, who knew what he would face? However, if he was alive, this matter might not be exposed. Therefore, there were some things that were hard to say. Shut up. Elder Bai Qian finally could not help but shout. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after, they unconcernedly curled their lips. It was already like this, what prestige did they still have to show off? Forcing the emperor and being remembered by the emperor, they shouldn't think that the emperor could punish Jin Qinhuang now. As long as the living King of Hell didn't fall, they had offended him like that before. In the future, who would care about the Bai family, who would dare to help the Bai family? Wang Yi must have planned all of this. Are you very proud that the Bai family has fallen to this state? How can your mind be so vicious? Since you already knew, why didn't you say it in private? If you said it, everything would be resolved. The Bai family scandal would not be known by everyone. In any case, I am your granduncle, Li Hongyuan sneered. Don't claim to be related to Ben Wang. This matter originally had nothing to do with Ben Wang. It was you who insisted on not letting go of Ben Wang and wanted to trample Ben Wang into the mud. What, you did the first time, but Ben Wang is not allowed to do the same. In your eyes, when did Ben Wang become a person who repays evil with good? On the day of the incident, Ben Wang said, if your Bai family insists on making things difficult for Ben Wang, then Ben Wang will definitely make your Bai family's chickens and dogs restless before being trampled. It's just that you didn't take Ben Wang's words seriously at all. If your attitude was better before, this matter would definitely be discussed with you in private. After all, Ben Wang has no interest in revealing other people's scandals. For so many years, Ben Wang has also kept his mouth shut. In any case, you are Ben Wang's granduncle. The same words were returned to Elder Bai Qian. How ironic. The dried orange peel on Elder Bai Qian's face twitched. He really had nothing to say. The King of Hell's conduct was known to all. Occasionally, even if you didn't provoke him, he could cause some trouble. Provoking him, he had never seen anyone who was able to get away without any trouble. Probably, from the moment his son went to his country residence, his tone was not good and his attitude was not good. Today's matter was already destined. Now it was too late to say anything. The Bai family's reputation was instantly ruined. This old man only wants to know one thing. How did Prince know about this matter? That's right, this was also what other people wanted to know. Others didn't know, but why did he know? This is purely a coincidence from more than 10 years ago. Ben Wang snuck out of the palace and happened to meet someone who escaped death. I didn't want to kill him, so I spared his life. Speaking of which, that person was also stupid. At first, he escaped death, but he didn't run far away. After going around in circles, he wanted to come back to see his son. He was so unlucky that he was discovered by his son's mother, who had already taken control of the Bai family's inner residence. He almost died again, but he was also lucky to have met Ben Wang. Can you blame him for not killing him? He said it himself, he was still young. In fact, Li Hongyuan already knew about it in his previous life. He knew about it from Master Bai. At that time, it was also a bad debt. It couldn't be explained in a few sentences. After Li Hongyuan was reborn, he naturally had to hold on to the things that could be held in his hands tightly. Thus, he calculated that it was about time, so he used his limited manpower and waited around the Bai family for a long time to protect old Madame Bai's adulterer. This kind of information could be used against him in the future. In fact, there were some things that could be done in preparation. However, in Li Hongyuan's previous life, when he died, this only son of the Bai family was still alive and well. Speaking of which, your Bai family's style of doing things is really unchanging. Regarding the death of that bastard child, you didn't ask about the right or wrong. Based on your mood, you first put a hat on Ben Wang. Now, this matter concerns the innocence of the Bai family's mistress. Similarly, you didn't investigate carefully and decided to convict her based on your own judgment. However, there is no second mistake. Since Li Hongyuan had already said it, what else could he say? There was no point in investigating now. Since it had already been determined, even if he explained it to the outside world, no one would believe him. They would only think that it was for the sake of face that they even admitted to the bastard child. Moreover, previously, he didn't think that it was Jin Qinhuang's fault. He just took it out on him and didn't let it go. It was for the sake of the Bai family's future. In the end, It was all for naught and the Bai family was completely lost. Now, based on his judgment, this matter couldn't be faked. If he couldn't stop it in the first place, then there was no need to do anything later. This old man wishes to ask Wang Ye for a matter. Can you hand over that adulterer to this old man? For the person who humiliated the entire Bai family, he must not let him live in this world. Compared to his previous attitude, it was definitely a difference of heaven and earth. Even now, his heart still hated Li Hongyuan. However, how could his only grandson be compared to a bastard child born from an adulterous affair between a servant and the mistress of the Bai family? For the former, you might be able to get justice for your entire family. For the latter, you might even have to thank the other party for killing the shame of the Bai family. For the former, you might even be able to threaten the emperor. For the latter, the emperor could slap you to death with a flip of his hand. You want the person, sure. What do you want to exchange with Ben Wang? What do you want to exchange? Jin Qin Wang could say that he didn't lack anything. The only thing he lacked was probably power. This thing wasn't something he could give. So how about surreptitiously submitting? But it also depended on whether the other person agreed or not. Li Hongyuan sneered, Ben Wang will take his leave. Turning around, he flicked his sleeves and directly left. Jing Wan, who hadn't said a word from the beginning, also leisurely left. Speaking of which, she really was purely watching the play. When the husband and wife left, the others also took their leave one after another. Burning incense with an adulterous child, they also felt particularly unhappy. However, now that the Bai family had become like this, they also couldn't look for trouble. None of Scholar Bai's sons-in-law stayed behind. Their wives wanted to go with them, but they were helpless. You don't need to go back. Our family can't accommodate you, this great Buddha. The letter of divorce and your dowry will be sent over later. This was the general treatment for the married daughters of the Bai family. Having that kind of mother-in-law, they lost all face. It was one thing to be worried about the daughter that she raised, but they were worried that if they kept the daughter of the Bai family, their own family would be pointed at and gossiped about. Although they had expected such a situation to happen, when it really happened, they still couldn't accept it. For a moment, they cried and wailed, begging in every possible way. If they were divorced and returned home with such a reason, how could they live? Those who scrupulously abide by their duties in the husband's family were a little better. For those who relied on the support of their family and acted like a tyrant in the husband's family, their husbands were not polite at all. They even punched and kicked. Their sisters-in-law and sisters-in-law were also angered. Before they left, they fiercely spat. However, old Madame Bai's eldest daughter stood in the same place, looking at her husband with hope. When he finally turned around and left, she stood in the same place in a daze. She wanted to cry but had no tears. It was conceivable that the unmarried daughters of the Bai family were not much better. For those who were still young, it was still okay. After a long time, the Bai family changed the head of the family, and the impact would be small. However, for those who were about to be married, their lives were really ruined. They hugged their birth mothers and cried bitterly. For a moment, the cries of the Bai family were even more earth-shattering than when they cried for Master Bai. It was also very real. There was no situation where there was only thunder and no rain. In the carriage, Jing Wan was not in a good mood. Li Hongyuan knew why. Wan Wan, do you blame your husband for being ruthless? Why would I? They attacked you first. Now, they want to strip you of your title. In fact, they want your life. So, how can you not fight back? As a daughter of the Bai family, we are bound together for good or ill. You enjoy the glory brought by the Bai family, so naturally, you have to bear the consequences brought by the Bai family. In this society that paid attention to family and family ties, everyone was the same. No one could escape from this circle. However, this matter is still too tragic for them. After all, they didn't do anything wrong in this matter, but they have to bear the consequences. It's just a pity. Wan, have you ever thought that they might hate your husband? Since you are one with me, you will not be left out. This is a very normal thing. So, this is how it is. In fact, in other people's eyes, this matter was not so bad in Jingwan's eyes. In the future, it might not be a miserable life. It all depended on what they thought and what they did. Jingwan always believed that a lot of things depended on her own attitude. Li Hongyuan held her in his arms. Don't worry. You can change it yourself in the future if you have the chance. Jingwan laughed. How easy it was to say. However, no matter how difficult it was, someone had to do it. If she really sat in that position and had the support of his power, Jingwan felt that she could not be indifferent. What are we going to do next? Jingwan asked, twirling a strand of Li Hongyuan's hair. Because of father's attitude, your husband is sad. Naturally, the next step is to heal. Jingwan silently lit a candle for Lu Qingdi. However, such a father deserved to be schemed against by his son. In fact, after Lu Qingdi learned about the Bai family, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, at the same time, he did have a headache. No one knew better than him how difficult it was to deal with his son. Originally, he had been prepared for his son to come to him. Should he avoid him or appease him? If he avoided him, others might think that he had really given up on his son. Maybe they would step on his son in some way. How could Lu Qingdi tolerate such a thing? But how could he appease him? If he failed to appease him, it might add fuel to the fire. Even he might be choked with anger. Now, not only did his son not come to him, he had also solved the root of the trouble. However, his previous attitude was already very obvious. Then, his son's anger would not be so easily dispelled. Especially since Lu Qingdi suspected that he already knew of his special birth and deprived him of the most important thing. Now, because of his maternal family, he gave up on him. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. So, what should he do? Thinking of this, Lu Qingdi was furious with Su Guifei. That woman, he might have really spoiled her too much. She even forgot how her own honor and favor came about. She dared to act recklessly. Lu Qingdi wanted to strangle that woman more than once, but he restrained himself every time and did not move. If it had already happened, then there was no way to reverse it. If it didn't happen, that woman might tell Yuan everything in a fit of anger. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. However, Lu Qingdi still made a note of it in his heart. Lu Qingdi sent people to give Li Hongyuan a large sum of rewards. As a result, Jin Qin Wang, who used to accept everything, this time disobeyed the imperial edict. He either took the things back to the palace or threw them out on the street. When Lu Qingdi heard the chamberlain's report, he was furious but helpless. He fiercely scolded the chamberlain. A group of good-for-nothings, they couldn't even send the things out. If they weren't good-for-nothings, then what were they? The chamberlain was angry but did not dare to speak. He could only obediently listen to the scolding. Lu Qingdi was busy coaxing his son. The Bai family's matter seemed to have come to an end. The Bai family asked for an audience, but Lu Qingdi did not meet them all. This time, it would not be settled by kneeling down. Even if it was by Shu, it was only about public matters and not private matters. He directly told Bai Shu that if his energy was not enough, he was allowed to go home and recuperate for however long. As a result, the Bai family could only give up and did not dare to mention it again. It could be said that this time, the Bai family's loss was quite heavy. They had worn away their friendship with Lu Qingdi and learned the truth that they did not want to admit. The family's only child was not dead, but they did not even have a single child. For the future of the Bai family, they became enemies with Wang. Not to mention a broad future, they were now on the verge of collapse. It was extremely difficult to stabilize. In addition, the Bai family still adhered to the principle of not easily wronged anyone. They carefully investigated. In fact, the matter that year, old Madame Bai thought that she was very strict. In fact, it was not. After all, at that time, she did not have the power of the Bai family's inner residence. At that time, no one suspected. Firstly, old Madame Bai was upright and dignified. Secondly, no one thought that old Madame Bai had such big guts. Therefore, it was hidden from them. If they really investigated, even after more than 10 years, there were still clues. Well, the truth was not different from what Wang said. Therefore, old Madame Bai, who was almost 60 years old, was divorced for the most despicable reason of obscenity. At this age, this kind of accusation could be said to be unheard of. Old Madame Bai's parents had passed away long ago. How could the brothers and the others accept a woman like her? If they took her back, it would simply be a disaster to the whole family. The whole family would not be able to raise their heads. Therefore, it could be said that old Madame Bai's divorce was not better than being dealt with in the Bai family. For the Bai family to do this, it was probably because the jar was broken. In any case, so many people knew about it. It would not be strange if the whole capital knew about it. There was no face left. How could they let the woman of the Bai family, who had fallen to this point, live well? As for the person who plotted this behind the scenes, he probably didn't expect such an ending. It was really like drawing water with a bamboo basket. He took the risk of being discovered and spent a lot of effort, but in the end, he didn't make a splash at all. At most, after a few ripples, he pushed the emperor closer to that side. How these people were, it did not affect Li Hongyuan at all. He did what he should do as usual. Luqingdi's side also did not pay attention to it. Originally, he planned to hand over the horse farm. However, after this incident, he did not care about it anymore. No matter how much money it cost, he was ready to pocket it all. According to Luqingdi's character, even if he had some scruples about the horse farm and the precious beast's garden, he would definitely suppress all the impeachment memorials at this time. After coaxing his son, he could also find a lot of reasons to smooth things over. The winning and losing of the race had been calculated. For those who won the bet, Jingwan sent people to go door to door to send silver notes or cash. Jingwan said that she was operating legally. How could she be greedy for people's money? The people who originally thought that they had wasted money were a bit confused when they received the silver. What was that? It seemed to be exactly the same as what they had won. It also said that the next horse race would be in 7 days and there would be no more invitations. If they had the idea of participating, they should send people to the farm to register in advance. They originally thought that Wang was going to suffer this time. Some people's illegitimate sons had already suffered a few days of supercilious looks. Unexpectedly, there was this kind of reversal. The originally anxious hearts calmed down in an instant. The others choked half to death. And those who were still regretting that they had found something fun with great difficulty and after one time, the real dandy who might die prematurely, when they heard the news, they were very happy. Then, one by one, they said, "That's right, who is Wang? How could anything happen to him?" Even if the urgent report from the 800-li border was about to reach the capital, based on the previous matter, Li Hongyuan would still take his wife to play as usual. In any case, even if someone said that he was indulging in a life of luxury, his old man would suppress his anger and not flare up. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.